you don't see Americans dying from starvation or war or
Yeah.
disease or those types of things that the rest of the world suffers from. But instead, you see us suffering from like depression, killing ourselves, being unhappy. So it's a different type of thing.
Welcome back to the Hero Front podcast, where we give veterans a voice and dive deep into the real stories that shape our community. And today, I'm joined by a man who embodies what it means to adapt, evolve, and lead by example. I'm talking about John H. Davis, a decorated combat veteran, author, and advocate for those who served.
No, I don't have anything, like I said, I'm retired, man. You're the one who retired and went straight into work. I just do this kind of for fun. I love to travel. I love to help veterans. I love to write. Like, writing's kind of my therapy. So, if I can do that, then I'm happy.
John served as an infantry squad leader with the 101st Airborne Division. And after multiple combat deployments, John transformed his life, earning a master's in education from Harvard University, teaching incarcerated youth, and ultimately becoming a powerful voice for veterans everywhere. He's the author of books such as Combat to College and 365 Days of Veteran Affirmations, and other impactful works that have guided thousands through their post-military journeys.
So my advice for veterans is start putting yourself first. Start to serve yourself. You did your time in the military. That was great. You put everything else first. Then now it's time to put yourself first and live the life that you deserve.
He's also been a legislative fellow, taken his advocacy to Congress, and is now creating content for veterans from around the world. Quite literally, because John has lived abroad, taught in Thailand, and now speaks out about why so many veterans are choosing to move overseas for peace, purpose, and just a better quality of life all around. So if you got 100% VA, a 20-year retirement, and a job, or you're going to school and getting paid just to go to school on top of all those other things, you're telling me you can just live a life off that out there. That would work.
Absolutely.
And today, we're diving into why veterans are jumping ship and just moving overseas. We're also going to talk about how environment and culture can drastically improve veteran mental health, and what practical advice John has for anyone dreaming of a life beyond the U.S. borders.
And America, over the past few years, has obviously gotten more and more individualized just as a country. In America, we're kind of slowly getting less and less happy, more and more fat. That's just the way it's going.
Damn, I feel that. This is a conversation about healing, exploration, and the freedom to rewrite your story.
Come to the Dominican Republic, find yourself a 25-year-old girlfriend, and live the life of your dreams.
What's up, Josh here, and I got a quick update for you before we get back to the episode. Just give me 30 seconds of your time, because there's two things that I just have to say to you. And the first is just a tremendous thank you from the bottom of my heart for listening and tuning into the show week after week. It means the world to us, and it really is a dream come true to not only be sharing the incredible stories of these guests, but to then inspire so many of you listeners. It has become my life's purpose, and I cannot thank you enough for supporting me and so many others on this journey of positivity. But secondly, it's a dream where I feel like we are just getting started, and the sky is the limit. I am so excited to see where this goes, and I'm so blessed to have you on this journey. And if you appreciate this message, if you appreciate what we do here at the Hero Front Podcast, please follow us on this app. Hit subscribe. Now, if you do that, here's the promise that I'm going to make to you. I am going to do everything in my power to make this show as good as I possibly can now and going forward. We're going to deliver the guests that you want me to speak to. We're going to have the topics that you want to hear about. And of course, we're going to keep doing all the things that you've always loved about the podcast. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. Now let's get back to the show and let's get after it. I'm going to go into 3 talking points. The first talking point is why veterans are moving abroad, and we can talk about things like what inspired you to do it, how the U.S. is like crazy as shit these days. It's dangerous, and people that you've kind of talked into doing what you've done and how that played out for them. And then talking point 2, it's going to be more of the mental health and reinvention of yourself. and kind of how your mental health has changed when you made the decision. We can talk about how suicides apparently are lower for veterans living abroad, like drastically.
Yeah, they're like zero.
That's insane to me. I think people should definitely hear that. And then how this mentally, can you build a community overseas? Can you find purpose overseas? Because you're kind of like a vagabond. You're like traveling everywhere, right? That's a whole different lifestyle than what Americans used to. Americans are like, wife, kid, white picket
Yeah,
fence.
the stable.
Yeah,
Yeah, the stable life and everything.
literally what I'm doing. So, and then the third talking point will be roadmaps for veterans overseas. So more of like the resources on the third talking point, like benefits that still apply when they're overseas. Some of the more veteran friendly countries, that you prefer. And then we could end with any advice you would give anyone who's listening to the episode on the fence about moving overseas. So that's pretty much how I saw
Sounds
it
good.
going down. What do you think?
That sounds good.
That's good? Okay.
Yeah, sounds great, man.
I've had a lot of time to read up on you because we kept delaying it, or I kept delaying it.
No, I don't have anything, like I said, I'm retired, man. You're the one who retired, then went straight into work. I just do this kind of for fun. I love to travel. I love to help veterans. I love to write. Like writing's kind of my therapy. So, if I
Yeah,
can do that, then I'm happy.
absolutely, man. What's up, my man?
It's good to be here. I love that intro. I need to put that on my Tinder bio or something like that.
Everyone says that. I'm like, maybe I should just create intros for people. Be like, hey,
Hey,
$20,
I
I'll
wish I
give
could
you,
read.
I'll give you a badass
Yeah.
professional intro. $20. You can find me on Fiverr.
Yeah, I wish that that read every time I walked into a room, so I don't have to
Right.
introduce myself or prove yourself. And I think that's something that veterans, I think feel a need to do is constantly prove ourselves because it's such like a competitive environment. And then even when we get out of the military, it's hard to kind of shake that constantly competing, constantly working mentality, which is why so many veterans, like yourself, for example, get out of the military immediately and then just go straight to work and never take a break for themselves, never take a break to figure out who they want to be without the uniform, and never take a break to just relax. So the message I'm starting to tell the veterans and have been telling is the benefits of moving and living abroad as a veteran. And I got into this because nobody really knew for our generation of veterans, like the Iraq and Afghanistan generation of veterans, that other veterans were already living abroad. Some of them missed to it and provided information. And just because no one else was doing it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know really hardly anyone that has. I know when I was a young airman, I was stationed in Guam and in Japan, and a
Hmm.
lot of those older dudes, were stationed in the Philippines before.
Yep.
And they had like their tight knit Philippine like group, like, man, the Philippines, Clark Air Force Base. I mean, they said it was the craziest, wildest time of their life, and that they were all gonna move back. And I'd say probably three of them that I'm friends with on Facebook are to this day living in the Philippines. Outside of that group, I have not seen it much. Maybe a few stayed in Japan. I have a buddy who opened his own English school in Japan. He's really just loves the culture there. And I don't blame him. I love Japan too. It's like living in an anime.
Yeah.
It's amazing. It's safe. It's comfortable. Like every day
All
is a
those
new
benefits.
adventure, right? There's history everywhere. There's hikes. There's the ocean. There's just so much out there, man. So I kind of can relate with you because I've been stationed overseas.
Hmm.
But I'm kind of living the opposite life of you as far as retirement or a version, a type of version, right? Like you're the free spirit. You're traveling the world, writing books, like finding yourself, finding your purpose, and I love all that. And I respect that. On my end, I have the baby boomer's dream. I'm following my father's footsteps, which is, try to get your degree while you're still in, retire, go right into a GS job so you can start working on that second retirement. Have the house, the white picket fence, the dog, the kids, the wife. Like there's that lifestyle too, which is the more traditional American approach. So I am fascinated by you. Part of me is envious of you, right? Because I see what you're doing. I see the impact you have. You're free. You freed yourself, and now you're free to help others. And that's beautiful. That's amazing that you've done that. And so here's some of our talking points today. We're going to talk about why veterans are moving abroad. We're going to roll into the mental health side, and then we're going to hit the resources and roadmaps for veterans overseas. So on the first talking point, why veterans are moving abroad, we have to tie it back to you, my friend, your reason. And so I would love to know, because I don't even know the full story, what got you into this lifestyle?
Well, there's no right or wrong way for veterans to live their lives after service, whether it's the white picket fence in America or whether it's living on a beach in the Philippines. And one reason, kind of like you mentioned, for your being stationed abroad experiences is that a lot of times when we're abroad, whether we're stationed in Germany, Korea, Japan, or wherever else in the world, those are some of our best military years. And it's like you mentioned, every day is an adventure. And my
Hmm.
life in the military was an adventure. I mean, that's what you're doing. You're living out an adventure, and moving abroad when you get out of the military kind of keeps that adventure rolling. And I think that's important for veterans because we're not the almost type of people. We're not sit on a couch type of people. We're people that want to be in the center of the action. We want to be on the front lines. We want to be stars in our own movie. And then when we get out of the military, we're not really sure what to do. And there's a million paths in front of veterans, and it's a lot more uncertain than like our grandfather's generation who came back from World War II, and it's kind of a more traditional lifestyle. For us, we're kind of coming into a more globalized world, an international economy, and problems in our home country. So the cost of living, you kind of have to start with that, why veterans are moving abroad, because there's so many veterans out there on a fixed income, and you take those same dollars and you apply them to the Philippines, where the average rent is like $350 a month. So your buddies who are stationed with you are paying that for rent. But if they're making their military retirement or their VA benefits or they're working online, then they're able to live a really, really high quality of life.
Well, I didn't even think about working online. So if you got 100% VA, a 20-year retirement, and a job that's paying you online,
Or you're going to school on the GI Bill.
or you're going to school and getting paid just to go to school on top of all
Yeah.
those other things, you're telling me you can just live a life off that out there. That would work.
Absolutely. You have veterans in the Philippines that are making 10, 20. They're making $10,000 a month off military retirement, VA compensation, and GI Bill. Not to mention, you get a little bit older, you get Social Security, you get Social Security disability, and things like that. So plenty of these veterans out there are making $12,000 a month. And in the Philippines, it's like the equivalent of like $600,000 in the
Oh
United
my
States
God. Are you serious?
because yeah, the cost of living is so low. I mean, when I was there, I was in the Philippines last year, and all the veterans that I talked to were paying between like $300 and $400 a month for rent. And they have the FW posts there. They have great TRICARE system there. They have many American Legion posts there. And the Philippines is a great country for veterans. I know we'll talk about countries in a little bit because the people there speak English. So when
Hmm.
everyone's English speaking, it's just kind of easier. Whereas for me, I live in the Dominican Republic right now, and obviously people speak Spanish there.
I deployed there before with the Army. The Army has like a camp there where they rotate their medics through for humanitarian work. So it's kind of like,
Mhm.
hey, we're getting training, but we're also helping this community. And so I was in the worst parts of the Dominican Republic. I've never been there on vacation.
Do you
I
remember
got
the
to
city?
I can't, unfortunately. It was so many bus rides through the mountains, dude. I don't even know where I was at. Um, is Santo Domingo like the main city?
That's the capital. That's the
Okay,
capital of
I
the
did
city.
get to see that on my last day. So we did get to take a trip there. There's like a courtyard of birds by this old like cathedral. Is freaking. It was like
Yeah,
something out of a damn movie.
That's the Christopher Columbus statue they still have up there.
So when you go there, just know that I've been in those exact places.
It's really nice. We have 20,000 American veterans that live in the Dominican Republic. We
Uh-huh.
have specific veteran centers set up for our healthcare. We have veteran events there. We have a veteran event next month, April 9th, where there'll be a ton of veterans will come together. We'll all kind of hang out together. So what we're doing is one thing that is important when you move abroad for veterans, especially, is the mental health aspect. And a big thing with veterans is community. And to talk about one of the problems that we have in the United States is the lack of a community, the lack of people going to churches, the lack of people going to parks, the lack of people in malls and third spaces. And in the Dominican Republic, people are very family and community centered. So for veterans, we kind of fit right into that mentality to where community, teamwork, all those things are very high up on our list of priorities. And America, over the past few years, has obviously gotten more and more individualized just as a country.
No, you're right. I mean, it's kind of sad to see, when you like
Yeah.
there's malls still open here in Florida, but like half of it's shut down. So it feels like you're in like a
Yeah.
horror movie. Uh, and it's like a Kohl's and a gym in there and like an Old Navy. And you're like, why is this entire mall open for these three stores? It's weird. So you got that, like bowling alleys on bases across the US are all being shut down. People don't do that
Yeah.
anymore. I grew up on Andrews Air Force Base with
Oh,
my
okay.
dad in the bowling league. I'm fourth generation airman. I'm talking inception of the Air Force to me.
Oh, wow.
So this is like, my purpose was to do this. But seeing my dad on the bowling league, and then I got into bowling, I go back to visit Andrews like 5 years ago, and it's shut down. And I'm just like, because I wanted to walk around in there, and I'm like, I can't even.
Right.
It's shut down. It's locked up. I'm like, man, how did we get here?
Yeah.
And then when you're stationed overseas, it's kind of the same mentality you're talking about. I mean, when I was, they just shut down a gaming center here on Eglin that was state of the art. I'm talking when you walked in this gaming center, it would blow your mind. You'd be like, I mean, rows of computers set up, like multiple floors, arcades, like snack bar. I'm talking like Airman White would have been all up in that, just going ham every weekend on Halo, right? Like my community center was super tiny and basic, and this one just shut down, dude. They just
Mhm.
shut it down. It was owned by the USO, and they couldn't justify keeping it open. And overseas, that would not happen. That because the
No.
community is there, it's on base. It's like a little American village, essentially. Families are tight knit, and anyone who's been stationed overseas always talks about missing that community part.
Yeah. It's
And
like Blockbuster shutting down.
right, which is a sad
Moving
day.
abroad, it's a sad day, but moving abroad to me was like that, where it's like
Yeah.
going back to the 90s to where people go to malls, people gather together, people are
hmm
nicer, people are, Americans have been steadily getting less and less happy since the 1950s. And the New York Times just came out this week with an article about how now America is the 24th happiest country in the world, which is the lowest that we've ever been. We are significantly less happy than other nations. And some of that is because of what you mentioned, because of the community aspect, because Americans aren't going to church anymore. Americans aren't bowling anymore. They're not playing on softball teams anymore. But in Dominican Republic, 3 blocks away from my house, every single night people gather there to play baseball and softball, and mothers come out and cheer, and people drink beer, and everyone goes to church and the bar afterwards and all that stuff. And you really have that where in America, we're kind of slowly getting less and less happy, more and more fat. That's just the way it's
Yeah,
going.
damn, I feel that. Especially the fat part. I don't have PT test anymore. So it's funny you mentioned that. You just reminded me of something. When I got back from the Dominican Republic, my wife said, you seem different. I was like, what?
Mhm.
Because I had no service out there, right? Like my phone didn't work. I didn't even have a nice phone anyways. Like there was no electronics, essentially, right?
Right.
I was in tents with the army on this camp. Like it's very basic. We're
That's a
playing.
cool experience.
It was cool. Like you could see the mountains, you could see the ocean. There's like these white faced cliffs. It
Mhm.
was beautiful. Um, but we were just playing sports. We were playing touch
Yeah.
football, basketball. The Dominicans would come on base. They'd play like this loud ass music that would like burst your eardrums and cook all this food. I was like, hello, can you hear me? I don't know
Yeah.
how they listen to it that loud. It's crazy. But my point is, it was all in person stuff. And when I got back, My wife literally told me I seemed happier, and I actually was.
Yeah.
I thought about it, and I was like, I felt more confident. I felt more
Hmm.
like myself, and it kind of hit me like maybe like all the scrolling, all the social media, all the disconnect, it's kind of removing your thoughts, your personality, and filling it with the thoughts and personality of others. And
Hmm.
once I removed all that, I kind of like found myself again, my personality, me, because I didn't have all this crap flooding my brain and
Yeah.
filling up my thoughts.
Absolutely. And you're outside. So in the Dominican Republic, we live outside, so you're more connected with nature. You're in the sunshine more. You're like drinking fresh coconuts every day and eating fresher food. So all of these kind of play into it. And I think the disconnection of America from like nature is a big part of that because Americans spend like 90% of our time indoors. A lot of us never have, like, for example, our bare feet even touch the earth. And when I'm in the Dominican Republic, I'm able to do things like swim in the ocean every day. And me and my veteran friends all go out to dinner together like twice a week. And you have this kind of community of people where you're disconnected not only from, like what you said, the constant scrolling, technology, United States, but you're also disconnected from some of that like political division. You feel like in America, every conversation kind of lean towards negative and complaining. Like that's kind of just what people do. People bond over being sarcastic to one another. People bond over negativity or complaining or whining. And as veterans, we tend to do that sometimes even more than other people because we have this addiction to dark humor, embracing the suck, cursing, all that, and that can stick with us. But abroad, we don't talk politics. We talk about fun stuff. We talk about real conversations. You have time to hang out with your friends. In the United States, it's like a never-ending to-do list, and everyone's always rushing around. Here in Dominican Republic, I can be like, let's do a 2-hour dinner and just hang out and have a couple beers or whatever else, where you can't really do that in the States because we've totally fucked up our understanding of like a work-life balance and what that is.
Yeah, it's called work life.
Yeah, that's what it is. Dominican Republic, they don't work very hard, but they're also way happier than we are.
Yeah. In America, we've somehow centered our whole existence and purpose around work. I swear to God, Chat GPT, AI, you know how God created man in his image? We created AI in our image, right?
Ooh,
It's all
right.
productivity. It's all facts, data. I
Hmm.
want the answer now. I want all efficiency, everything efficient. I don't want so all the personal stuff is gone to the wayside. Like
Right.
I can't capture your happiness on an Excel, so I'm not concerned with your happiness. It's kind of gotten to that mentality. This is how I
Yeah.
know
And you
AI is
can't
going to take
quantify it.
over. Yeah, this is how I know AI is going to take over because we're already acting like it.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? And it's like every time, like I just had a talk with my team. I'm in suicide prevention as a job.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so it's veteran suicide prevention, sexual assault prevention, drug prevention, alcohol abuse, all prevention aspects. And so we have great talks in the office, right? Because we're all the like-minded individuals. And everything they brought up was like very basic human stuff. Like, oh yeah, studies just show if like we break bread together, if we eat together.
Hmm.
And it's like, that's why we're human. Like,
Right.
let's go back to like our caveman ancestors. Those things, that's still us. In the grand scheme of time, that's not that long ago. That's a blink of an eye ago, right? To us, it feels like, oh, that's not us. It is us. That we're still those same cavemen who love being in a community, a tribe, who love eating together, who love spending time together, who love being outside. We're still that same creature.
Hmm. And one reason that I wanted to get this message out there to veterans was exactly that, was because we've so overcomplicated our lives when in reality they can be kind of simple. And abroad, I do have a simpler life, and the mental health aspect to me is probably the most important thing when it comes to veterans moving abroad. One, because financial health is mental health. When you have more money and aren't stressed about the bills, you're naturally going to be happier when you remove that stressor. But other than that, the mental health aspect of it is disconnecting from what I'll call like sort of an unhealthy society in America. Like you mentioned, our fixation with work and things, and then also the over politicization of our entire culture, which has just led people to kind of go crazy. Whereas I feel like abroad, I'm able to just live what I feel like should be a normal life after retiring from the military.
Absolutely. So political division, mass shootings, um,
Yeah.
like are you dealing with the constant bickering and arguments and looking over your shoulder because the high crime rates here in the US, are you doing that where you're at?
Mhm. No, I think that American cities are like the most dangerous place to possibly be. It seems like whenever I go back and I have to go through New York or something, like you can't be relaxed on a subway in New York. And I think that also leads to veterans worsening of PTSD because if you have to be hyper alert, then it's hard to relax. And one of the things that hit me when I moved to the Dominican Republic is I started sleeping through the night. I started losing those kind of hyper vigilant feelings. Whereas, like, I had to be kind of on guard and looking around all the time. And I started just feeling chilled out. So, where I live in the Dominican Republic is incredibly safe. I've been there almost 4 years. I've never had a safety issue ever. Whereas in the United States, it seems like anything can happen at any time. That's not to say like the Dominican Republic is super safe because some areas are not, but it's all the how do I phrase this? So, like 25% of the entire country's economy is based around tourism. So, they go out of their way to keep me and the other gringos and the foreigners safe. If you commit a crime against me, it's basically like the equivalent of a very, very bad hate crime in the United States. So, they punish it even harder than if you like shoot another Dominican or something.
Yeah, I think a lot of the tourism, like Egypt's the same way. They have a lot of crime there, but they're like, you better not
Don't
threaten that, because that's
don't touch them.
that's like what's driving the country's success is all the
Yeah,
the tourism, right? That's a lot of money. Again, I
yeah.
haven't seen that part yet. I hope to. I was when I went there, I was at the dangerous part, but it was very rewarding though because we were able to help people that were just medically just wrecked. I mean, whether they were going blind or there was people with their skin falling off, man, with like diseases that rot your skin off, like
Right.
some biblical
Diseases that
stuff.
America hasn't had in
Exactly,
500 years or something,
exactly.
forever.
Like diseases that you forgot about, because they're not vaccinated, they have them in their communities. And that's also where I learned where being a medic is like incredibly brave. Because I looked around and I said, in the hospital, 'cause I'm public health, like disease prevention. So I'm like, are we exposed to this? Like, in the hospital, we wouldn't expose ourselves to this. And they're like, you're deployed, man. Like you're here for them. Like that's a risk that you're gonna take being here. And that's when
Mhm.
it really hit me. Like, whoa, like this is powerful. And I'll tell you too
And
about
that
the
gives you a lot of gratitude too. I mean, you're so
oh
grateful for the life that we have, that grew up with, where you don't see that type of stuff. Like, you don't see Americans dying from starvation or war or
yeah.
disease or those types of things that the rest of the world suffers from. But instead, you see us suffering from like depression, killing ourselves, being unhappy. So it's a different type of thing.
Yeah, the perspective was tremendous. Like their houses were made of like clay. They didn't have like they didn't have a bathroom. Like they would have
Yeah,
to find a place outside. Like they didn't have running water in some of the houses. We live like kings and queens, truly.
right.
So having that
100%.
perspective was tremendous, and then being able to help them was like the super rewarding. I'll never forget it. As far as the crime rate goes, I noticed it when I was in Japan for 2 years. I was at Okinawa, and I got 30 days of leave after that assignment ended. So I flew back
Hmm.
to my hometown, which is near DC, and was super nervous, like on
Yeah.
edge. I was like, it was so the vibe was so different. I had to keep looking over my shoulder. Everything was loud and chaotic, and
Japan is so clean too.
dude, I remember being in the mall just being so uncomfortable. And I'm like, what is wrong with why do I feel on edge right now? Because I let my guard down for so long and I didn't realize it until I came back. It was
Yeah.
actually harder to come back than going to Japan. They talk about culture shock. The culture
Hmm.
shock didn't happen in Japan. The culture shock happened when I got back to the US.
A reverse cultural shock. Yeah.
Isn't that weird?
Yeah, that happens when I go back to the States too. Whenever I have to go back to the States, I really can't wait to get out. And I think that everyone is so aware that like 20 veterans kill themselves every day in the United States.
Hmm.
And I always tell veterans, like, listen, if you're feeling anything like that, you have options out there. And sometimes what you need is not necessarily to move abroad because moving abroad is not for everyone. It's not for most people. But what you do need is a significant reset. What you do need is something like that, like your experience coming to Dominican Republic, even if it's for work. If you can just disconnect, sometimes it's what you really need to do because a lot of times we're so plugged into our culture, so plugged into our work life, so plugged into the problems with our family and all that, that kind of a vacation might be more what you need. And that's when I started writing about therapy and thinking about travel therapy as like a real option for veterans.
Absolutely, man. I got to tell you what, from my perspective, I have a driving question that I just have to ask you. Relationships, marriage, children, girlfriend. What does that look like for someone like you?
For me, on a personal level, although my mother would hate to hear this, I hope she doesn't listen. I'm not really very interested in having kids, but if I did have kids, they would definitely be outside of the United States. So, one, for a few reasons, I don't want to lose all my money to child support and a divorce or something like that. And you have more protections outside the United States. Whereas, I think a lot of men in the United States, we do have a men's mental health crisis. And a lot of that is because of relationships. And a lot of men I do talk to, a lot of veterans go abroad because they are looking for more traditional minded women, which exists more in places like the Dominican Republic or in the Philippines or Thailand or wherever, opposed to the United States, where you kind of have the high rise of feminism and higher divorce rates and women who might not be, we'll say, as interested in cooking and cleaning as a woman in the Philippines might be. So, for me, I think dating abroad is a fun aspect of it. I usually, if I go to another country, I have some Tinder adventures, go out on some dates, and a lot of times that's the best way to get to know a place. Go out, do local stuff, go to people's favorite places, meet new people, practice the language. So, for me, dating is more fun outside the United States, I would say, than in the United States, where I don't know. I mean, the last time I approached a girl in a New York City bar, she told me I was too short to even buy her a drink. And, just the week before, I was on a trip in Africa, with like women that were like way up here. So it was a weird experience, and I'll never forget that.
She told you you're too. How tall are you?
I'm like 5'6", so I'm kind of short, but I'm
I'm the
not,
same height, dudes. Dude, short dudes have the gift of gab. Let's be real.
yeah. That's why I had to go to Harvard and stuff to try and get my resume up.
Right. I mean, big dudes are intimidating, but if you got a short dude who's intimidating, that's like even worse.
Yeah.
That's like Tom
So
Cruise vibes.
right, exactly. So, I think our dating culture has turned a little toxic, and that's one thing for men, especially, I've been divorced. My roommate is
So
a
so
fellow
you
Army
have
veteran.
so you have been married.
Yeah, and like when I
Okay.
was like 19, one of those
Oh.
early military marriages
Hmm.
and then divorce, after my first deployment. But my roommate is a retired Army guy too, and he's been divorced. So it's one of those things where dating abroad in Dominican Republic, a lot of beautiful women. It's a fun environment for veterans, and that's definitely something that is, I would say, a benefit of moving abroad.
Do you have a girlfriend right now, or are you just like playing it day by day?
I got a couple girlfriends, man, a couple different countries.
I had a feeling you were going to say that. Um,
Yeah, I always tell people I'm, 38, no wife, no kids, no pets, no problems. And that's the way I prefer my life for right now. In the future, things might change. I'm gonna kind of do a reflection point when I turn 40, but for now, I value
mhm,
freedom more than I value kind of anything else and the ability to travel and do what I want
mhm.
and scuba dive every week, play golf every week. Those are the things that I really get a lot of joy and happiness from.
Yeah, and that's why I'm so happy for you, man, because you did what probably a lot of people should do, because like let's be real, like the family life's not for everyone, and they think it's
Hmm.
the only way, and they try to
Hmm.
fit that square block into the circle peg, and it's not
Yeah.
fitting, and they just keep banging their head on the wall. Whereas you kind of, were aware of yourself, what brings you joy, and you took the leap, which is awesome. As far as your living situation goes, are you in Taiwan right now?
Yeah, so I just did a month in Thailand, and one thing that I was excited to talk about is the foreign medical program when we get into actual talking about that. But a lot of veterans aren't aware that you can receive superior health care outside the United States, paid for by the Veterans Administration, than you can in the United States. So, a couple of examples. So in Thailand, there is a veteran addiction center that will pay for a 30, 60, or a 90-day stay for a veteran at absolutely no cost in a five-star facility. And then they have a contract with the Veterans Administration where they will bill them. So I went there to interview some veterans who are going through treatment for alcoholism and addiction at nothing out of pocket. And it's beautiful, amazing in Thailand. So I wrote an article about that on my blog. A lot of veterans are unaware how healthcare works outside the United States when it comes to veterans. So you have TRICARE outside the United States, which is amazing. If you're retired, you can utilize that in a lot of different countries. But what I use in the Dominican Republic is the foreign medical program, where it's only for service-connected treatments. So, say I can go do physical therapy for my back once a week, I can do group therapy, all that stuff at absolutely nothing out of pocket. And then the treatment center will bill the Veterans Administration. So for me, I receive superior health care in the Dominican Republic than I did in the United States as a veteran.
Yeah, I never would have expected that. I'm picturing like worse, like way worse. But I do know a lot of people go to Thailand for medical care. I've heard of that.
Yeah,
I
because
know
it's so cheaper. So
yeah, they're
I mean, you
top. They're
have,
some of the best surgeons in the world,
yeah,
plastic surgery for sure. I've heard that.
yeah,
I remember, women in Okinawa taking leave to Thailand for cosmetic
hmm,
surgery. I do remember that and be like, what? That's actually cheaper and better?
yeah.
That was surprising. So yeah, that's amazing, man. As far as like, your living situation, do you prefer hotel to hotel, or do you prefer having like a home and then also adding hotels on top of that? What's your approach to that?
So I rent a place year round in the Dominican Republic, and I have a roommate with another veteran. It's a very sweet condo. Like we got everything in there. It's all like the ultimate man cave type place. And then in the Thailand, I rented a room for 30 days. It cost me like $700, I think,
For
for
30
30
days.
days. Yeah, and it's a nice place. They clean it every day. It's a nice place. So they have a pool there and everything. So you can live in hotels in Thailand if you want for like $600 a month if you want to do that. Like pretty nice hotels bouncing around. Or you can rent a place. Like my friend who's a Marine that I stayed with for a little bit, he rents a really nice two-bedroom for like $340 a month or something. So you have this lower cost of living, which can equal a higher quality of life, especially for veterans if they're, like we talked about, working online or just living off their VA compensation or they're just retired.
Wow. So, talking about mental health, reinventing yourself, it sounds like, you know, you've done that. I was hoping you could kind of touch on what the suicide rate looks like for veterans overseas, and what does your community feel like, and like, what is your normal day-to-day interaction with them?
I think, well, your environment plays a lot more into mental health than I think we understand. I think that one overlooked factor when it comes to just the overall mental health well-being is what kind of environment you're in. And that includes everything from your work to your relationships to if you're in somewhere like Seattle with no sunshine, I think that kind of plays into it too. So one thing where I live is the mental health environment is really good and people are generally happier. And happiness kind of spreads just as much as a disease or anything else. So I've never heard of a veteran abroad killing themselves. I have heard of some dying in like motorcycle accidents or, maybe alcohol related things or something like that. But the reality is people don't really kill themselves in the Dominican Republic like they do in the United States. Like there's no such thing as a youth suicide in the Dominican Republic. You know what I mean? Whereas in the United States, obviously, like 14-year-olds, 15-year-olds, 16-year-olds kill themselves all the time. So suicide's not really part of the culture like it is in America, where, veteran suicide, youth suicide are now as as American as like baseball or Taylor Swift or something, whereas the Dominican Republic doesn't really exist. And I always tell veterans, hey, if you're struggling, like when veterans come to Dominican Republic to my town, I got an apartment complex that gives them a room for like $500 a month. Here's the beach, here's a cold beer, like relax. And we have veteran events monthly. We do a veteran excursion every month with like anywhere between like 10 to 30 veterans. We all go out, rent a boat or something like that. So one thing that we started doing is really honing in on the community factor and the networking thing, to where we bring veterans in, introduce them to everything, kind of run you through like your PCS or something like that. If you want to come down, and we have connections with like the international school there and everything for veterans with families. So it's actually been a pretty cool experience, because when I first started talking about veterans abroad, I was really shocked at like the the result, like how many people wanted to know about it.
Man, that's wild. It's like you've created like an in-processing like onboarding for folks.
Yeah, that's what it feels like.
But like
It's really just like
how do they find you though?
usually Instagram, like Instagram and TikTok are big ones, because I have like 150,000 followers across like Instagram and TikTok. So people really like see the videos or message me or read my blog or something like that. So usually social media, and then now we've doing some more stuff on like Facebook and podcasts like this and stuff, because a lot of veterans, when they find out like, oh, I can live in the Philippines for my VA compensation like a millionaire. And when the answer is yes, it's like, okay, well, that's appealing, especially more so if you're like, if you're like me, if you're a single guy. If you're a family man, obviously it's a much more considerations, a lot more challenges. But if you're a single veteran, you're really well suited to live abroad, because the military prepared you for that. What else do you need as a guy to be happy other than like a nice TV and like a decent apartment, and you can walk to the beach, you can walk to bars, you can walk to nice restaurants. Guys are pretty easy to please. So when I talk to veterans about moving abroad, it's kind of like a good conversation, 'cause I know them, they know me. Like I know you're a veteran, so it can be kind of be more candid, and get into it. So I think that for a lot of male veterans who are looking at the dating scene in the United States, they're looking at the rising cost of living, they're looking at their own maybe mental health and things like that, and they're deciding a better, higher quality, happier, more peaceful life might be somewhere like the Dominican Republic, or might be somewhere like the Philippines. And you have extra factors like the explosion of remote work, where a lot of people aren't working in person. So why would you live in like DC or New York or somewhere like that when you can rent a dope ass apartment in the Dominican Republic near the beach, surrounded by pretty girls?
So, you hit a good point there too. We're talking about male veterans, right? How many female veterans do what you do?
Not many. So there are a lot in Punta Cana in Dominican Republic, a few that I know, and there's a few in Costa Rica. Costa Rica is it's a friendlier, safer country, I would say. And then a few like in Thailand that I was with this last month. But you gotta think like 20% of the military is female, and then females are obviously more likely to have kids and have custody of the kids and things like that. So they're less likely to move abroad. So most of what I talk about is kind of like male veteran base, because that's
Yeah.
what I am and that's what I understand. But I was surprised, I get a couple messages a week from female veterans who are interested. And at first I was kind of surprised. And then I started getting more messages from like families. And I had worked in education internationally. I have a master's degree in international education. So I can talk pretty intelligently about how oftentimes private international education is far superior to American public education. And there's so many good schools in the world that actually provide better springboards into good colleges and provide better educational outcomes for their students than like American public education, which has pretty much been steadily declining and failing in every metric. But if you're paying for a school in like Costa Rica, or like your friend's school in Japan, you're going to get a very high quality education geared towards better economic outcomes than some school in like Milwaukee.
Yeah. Speaking of families, let's talk about like let's just use my example.
Okay,
I got a VA compensation. I've got a retirement. I can work online because I do a lot of digital media, so that's I could easily do that.
sure.
So I could get a job there if I really wanted. And I have a wife, a 7-year-old, and a 5-year-old, and I want to move overseas. You know, that life would
Mhm.
look different than yours, right? You have a lot more freedom of movement. But if a family man like me wanted to do what you're doing, how would I do something like that? And what country would you think I should land in?
Well, you want to go, it depends. So for example, in Dominican Republic, that's where I live, so that's kind of where I know the most. Foreigners have full property rights. So you can buy a property in the Dominican Republic and your taxes would be pennies on the dollar to where they are now. So your taxes yearly, say for example, if you were to buy yourself your own house, would be like less than $300 a year for like a really nice 3-bedroom house with a pool and all that stuff. And one of the benefits of moving abroad and purchasing a property is the tax benefit. Whereas in the United States, obviously the taxes are incredibly high. Even if you're a veteran, some states will exempt you or whatever, but not everywhere. So then it would be that enrolling your kids in an international school. So usually when families go to move abroad, I tell them to first find the country and then find the school. So the country you want to go to, a lot of times it's going to be different for different people. Picking your country is kind of like picking a girlfriend or a boyfriend or a spouse. It kind of feels different for everyone. Like a lot of veterans who are stationed in like Germany or Japan fall in love with those places. They're like, wow, this is awesome. I live here in Germany. I can go different places. And like, then they might marry someone local and end up living their lives there. But if you're moving from the United States abroad, the first thing, pick your country, then pick the school. And the school will have a tremendous amount of resources in the community because the school is going to be kind of expat centric to where if you were to move to a nice community in Punta Cana, the school would have connections with realtors, with groups, they'd have outings, they have all this stuff. So they would kind of do like your PCS stuff as well as you finding kind of integrating into the community. So I would say that find your country and then find the international school where you put your kids. And that can be great because it can help you meet people because you're going to meet the other parents of the kids who are also in the school. And they're likely to be from Europe, from the United States, from Canada. And some of those people might be fed up with the American educational system. Some of them might be working or living somewhere like Dominican Republic or work for the embassy or a million and one things. But the expat community, in my experience, is like an incredibly helpful community.
That's amazing, man. Okay, let's talk about your more common demographic now. What is your most common demographic veteran that reaches out to you? And I want to hear a few success stories where like not only did they reach out to you, but you actually helped them live the life you're living. Do you have any success stories?
Yeah, lots. So there's some people just digitally, because some people will. So I have my free book for veterans moving abroad on my website, and people will download it, read it. I have a lot of resources in there, a lot of country information. So people will read that and they reach out to me and say, "Hey, I moved my family to Mexico," or "Hey, I'm coming to the Dominican Republic." And a lot of times, veterans, I probably meet with a different veteran, maybe 3 or 4 a month, who come to the Dominican Republic. They'll hit me up on social media, go out for a beer, kind of run them down the place, pros and cons of living here. So that's been incredibly rewarding. Recently had a veteran, Charles, who was a Marine veteran who was, I think he's 55 years old or so, and recently divorced and looking for a fresh start. So he's retired, divorced, divorced veteran, coming down to the Dominican Republic to kind of find a higher quality, peaceful life. And one thing that he said to me that, I don't think I'd heard before because he said, first quarter of my life, I was living just for my family till I was 18. Then I lived the second half of my life or the second quarter of my life for the Marine Corps, doing 20 years. And then I was living just for my wife and then we got divorced. So he goes, I lived, the first almost 60 years of my life for other people. And now I
Mm,
have like this last little bit of my life and I will live it for myself. And for a lot of men, I think that's hard because we're kind of taught, especially veterans, we're taught the mission comes first. We're taught our family comes first. We're taught our battle buddies come first. The country comes first. Work comes first. A million and one things, and we come last. And what I'm telling veterans to do is it's okay to look out for yourself. And that's why we have such high suicide numbers and things like that, is because we put ourselves last. So my advice for veterans is like start putting yourself first. Start to serve yourself. You did your time in the military. That was great. You put everything else first. Then now it's time to put yourself first and live the life that you deserve getting out of the military. And I've gotten some like pushback from veterans on that, like especially, like, oh, you abandoned your country. Oh, you should stay here and fight. And I'm always like, I don't really know what that means. Like, I don't know what you want me to do. I still pay US taxes. I still work with veterans. I don't know what I should be doing in the United States that I can't do over here. So that's kind of been weird, some like the angry messages and social media comments and stuff, but it's almost entertaining because, I think I just want veterans to be happy and open their eyes up to this possibility. And a lot of veterans really didn't know that you can get your VA compensation outside the United States. A lot of veterans really didn't know that you can get your health care outside the United States. A lot of veterans didn't really know that you can like move abroad and live this type of life. So I'm trying to kind of lay like just a path. Like here's open your eyes to it. Like you got to walk it. You got to do all the work. I'm not, doing any of that, but I want to open your eyes to the possibility of it, especially as things kind of go crazy in the United States.
Let's break it down into 5 steps. Let's say there's a I know I'm putting you on the spot here, and you're like, how would I break that into 5? Let's break it into 5 steps. I like sets of 5. It fulfills my
Mhm.
OCD. I'm a 20-year. Let's just say I'm a 20-year retired disabled veteran. Just got a divorce. And it was a bad divorce. I was taking care of this other person's kids. She cheated on me. She left. I'm looking. So not only I'm looking for. I do have my compensation. I do have my money. I don't really know my purpose. I don't know if I want to work or not.
Mhm.
I've tried jobs here and there. It didn't work out. And I can't find love. The dating scene is just insane. And I'm thinking about moving abroad and doing what you do. I've seen you on social media. I want to live your life. Give me the first 5 steps on how I go from my situation to John.
Well, that does actually sound like the majority of veterans that I talk to. But one of the first things that you do when you move abroad or when you want to move abroad is a trial run. So you do a veteran trial run to where you go somewhere and you want to go there for at least like a month at a time. So you want to go there for a month and find out how it really feels to live there. Because a lot of people have what you call the margarita effect, where you go somewhere on vacation and you're like, oh, this is great. I want to live here. But real life isn't a vacation. You're not just drinking all day at Suma Bar, eating buffets. It's not a resort. So the first thing you're going to want to do is a trial run. And then you come down, you feel like if it's really for you. And that's when you can find a place to live, find a more permanent apartment situation, and you figure out if it's going to be for you. Because a lot of times it might not be, and that's kind of the important thing. But I think it takes at least a month of a trial run to figure that out. The second thing you do when you go back to the United States is you downgrade your life. So before move abroad, you downgrade your life. I have some steps in my guide about that, about how we collect so much shit in our lives, like we just have so much stuff. I mean, it's ridiculous how much stuff we all end up with. So you have to downgrade that. Number 3, the financial aspect of it, you have to do a real hard look at your financial situation and what moving abroad is. There's a lot of free resources out there, or you can talk to a financial advisor or something like that. I'm not a financial expert, so I prefer not to give too much financial advice. But what you want to do is analyze the cost of living where you're going and make sure that you have enough to cover that and a little bit more. So there's like little general rules, like if you're a veteran, say your VA compensation is like 4,500, you're not going to want to spend more than like 1,000 of that, like less than 30% on like rent or something, which you're going to find a place way cheaper than that anyway. But these are good kind of figures to understand when you're moving abroad, how to do it. Let's see, what's that, number 3? So number 4 would have to be your logistics when it comes to like your mail, your things like that. And I kind of get into that on my blog, on my website, like how to set up your mail, all those kind of banking stuff, and all those kind of like tips and tricks that you need to do, the necessary logistics. And then number 5 would have to be come to the Dominican Republic, find yourself a 25-year-old girlfriend, and live the life of your dreams.
Okay, so let's say They let's come up with the second top 5 list. They've done all.
Yeah.
They've been in touch with you, John. You've helped them. You've been talking for a year now, and they're like, "Man, you've
I'm
been
not
a
gonna deal with
great John. You've
that.
been a great
Yeah.
resource, and I've I've got my ticket. I got my passport. I got rid of all my belongings, and I saved my money.
Hmm.
I'm coming. Can you meet me at the airport and pick me up?" And you say, "Sure, buddy. I'll meet you." And now they need to know the top 5 things to do upon getting in the Dominican Republic. What does that look like?
Well, we do have now we're starting to have monthly veteran get-togethers. So that's kind of one of the cool things that we're doing is at these get-togethers, we have all the veterans in our town come. We all link up at this American-owned bar. We all hang out, share resources. We usually have like a speaker come talk about something like that. So like whether it be real estate or healthcare, all that stuff. But one of the first things that I do when veterans come to Dominican Republic is get them set up with the healthcare clinic. So they go to the veteran healthcare clinic. And usually I'll take them, there's like 2 in our area. So I'll take them to both and then they can pick which one that they like the most. And that's where they can get all of their healthcare set up and they can purchase additional insurance if they want as well, which I don't have any, but you can. And that's where they can get their service connected medications, everything from a chiropractor to general medicine and stuff like that. So that's definitely an important aspect of it. Then I think an important step that I talk to veterans about is getting on a healthy routine because abroad, you do have a tendency, and a lot of veterans do kind of slip into unhealthy behaviors sometimes because you don't necessarily have those guardrails up that you do in normal American life. Like if you're drinking a beer at 9 o'clock.
Veterans fall
Okay.
under really bad habits. I could assume drinking, drug use, not working out, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So getting on a good routine, I think is an important part about moving abroad, and then finding healthy outlets because obviously you have a more of a temptation for unhealthy behaviors like, drugs, drinking, women.
So we hit on the in processing that you give, the medical support, getting that aligned, letting them know that they can slip into bad habits and to find a healthier outlet than drugs, alcohol, and women, and that falling down that spiral. What are the other 3 first things they do?
Then I would say learning about the local community is very important and getting involved in that aspect. Like I started taking local Spanish lessons with a tutor. I started going to church. I started volunteering within the community. So I think that's an important part of it because you don't want to move there and not be a part of the community. So one thing that my organization does is we donate to a local public school. So every event we have, we always give some money or supplies or something to the school. So it's important to give back. And then, I would say definitely get active, get healthy, get your mind right. Like it's kind of a mental health experience moving abroad, and you have to get used to being alone more, especially if you're moving abroad as a single guy. There's a big difference between like loneliness and solitude, but a lot of people just aren't used to being alone that much. So I would say surround yourself with healthy people, develop healthy habits, go to the gym and things like that. And then I would say reach out to the veteran community as the last thing. Everywhere you go has some really good veteran communities, and that's something I didn't really know. Where you have a lot of American Legion posts in Mexico, you have them in Costa Rica, you have them in Panama, you have a VFW in Thailand and the Philippines and Japan and all these places. So I think it is good to connect with other veterans because they're going to be the ones that will help you and guide you and mentor you and all that stuff.
That's amazing, man. Um, I gotta thank you, man, for just spending time with us today with the Hero Front audience. John, your life is cool as shit. And it's really heartwarming that someone like you has helped people so much. Like you did it on your own. You you went out there, you experienced it yourself, you're well versed in it, and now you've become this like beacon of hope for people who are wanting to quit. You've probably prevented suicides and you don't even know it. By helping people live this alternate lifestyle that is so much more fulfilling and brings so much more happiness to their life than, banging their head against the wall, doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result in
Mhm.
the States. And so, I want to thank you personally for just being a part of the veteran community and helping so many people and showing us this different way of life. Now, I don't think I can do it personally, but I will tell you, I'm going to come visit you. I want to do a vacation. I want to do a vacation because it sounds like vacations are also cheaper over there. Once I get over there,
Yeah.
I get the plane
Oh
ticket. That's
yeah.
probably, there's probably no way around a cheap plane ticket. But by the time I get to these other countries, if I want a vacation and live large as a retiree, disabled veteran, I could
Mhm.
probably have a much more robust vacation experience with my family than like if I went to Hawaii or Disney World or something like that, which is like
Oh yeah.
5 to 10 grand if you get the full experience in
Mhm.
Disney World for like 3 days. Like it's stupid.
Yeah.
So
And a lot of veterans will do that. They'll come down for like 3 months at a time. Just come down, spend 3 months, reset, do the stuff you love to do, and then go back to the States.
yeah, my wife's Filipino, by the way. So,
Okay.
and my kids are half, obviously. So, it would be cool for them to see their culture. My wife was born there and then she was adopted. She wasn't actually raised there, but she does have family there. And so it would
Oh
be really
well.
cool if like we did spend a summer break there, right? Like my kids are out of school.
Yeah.
My wife's Filipino. We go to the Philippines for a couple months, live like kings and queens, have the time of our life, hang out with John
Hmm.
out there writing books, changing lives with him. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what life should be about. Is it should be an adventure and things like that. And there are ways to do that with vacation abroad, things like that, that can be a hell of a lot cheaper because I think we could all agree that life in America has just gotten too expensive. And that's one thing that always hits me when I go back is like, I can't believe how much stuff costs. I mean, it's ridiculous that, because a lot of people do ask me like, how do you afford to live in Dominican Republic? And I'm like, dude, my rent is $500 a month. How do you afford to live in the States? Like, what are you talking about?
Bro, that's why I retired. Well, a reason. There's many reasons why I retired, but one was financially. I was
Yeah.
somehow I got into a place where, as an E7, I was struggling to save anything at all. I would be
Yeah.
I got to a point where I was paycheck to paycheck as a freaking E7. I swear to God, I had more money as an E6, 5, 6 years ago. Something is off with the prices here,
Yeah.
man. And I just
100%.
simply could not afford to exist anymore. And so I was like, retirement, I could retire, I could collect VA, and I could get a better paying job. So retirement is really my only option if I want to give my
Right.
family a good life here. And so, hearing you say that, man, it does sound much easier to manage over there because
Yeah.
it's gotten insane over here, man.
Yeah.
Especially
And
in
you don't
my
know,
area in
maybe
Florida.
when your kids graduate high school and stuff, retiring abroad because, I know you're in Florida now, but for people where I'm from, the dream was to move to Florida and retire there. But now even Florida's too expensive for like your average middle class Americans.
Oh yeah, I can tell you firsthand it's gotten wild out here, bro. Like the pay is not meet the demand. Like the housing uh is I can't buy a house. There's no way in hell. I'm renting a really tiny 1 floor house and it's like 500 grand. This house in a $500,000 house in Missouri at my last base would get you a damn mansion. Here,
Right.
you got a tiny little 1 floor house. It's crazy, bro.
Yeah.
All right, so my man, we talked about veterans moving abroad, your story, your purpose. You're out there writing books, changing lives, the mental health aspects of it, how it just creates this amazing community, the same community we felt when we were stationed overseas years ago. You've found a way to find that happiness, that freedom, that connection, even as a veteran, which is beautiful. And we talked about the medical care and how it's actually top tier over there. And you're able to hit all these different countries. The dating scene sounds much easier and more fun to navigate than it would be stateside. Again, I'm married, so I can't really speak to that, but you know, you seem like a
Take my
very
word for it.
happy young man. So I'm gonna say that you're the dating scene. You're probably killing it and having the time of your life. And you're showing people a different way of life, and I think that's amazing because you've probably saved lives. But as we come to a close, John, I wanted to give you the floor for your final thoughts to the listeners who hung in there to the very end of our episode.
Well, thank you for hanging in. And I would just like to say, if you're a veteran, that higher quality, more peaceful, and happier life can exist abroad at half the cost. And to go check out my website, It's johnhdaviswriter.com, where I have my free Veterans Guide to Moving Abroad, which I'm now working on the third edition of it because people kept asking more questions. So I'm continuing to add more and build on it. Things like moving abroad with pets and all these kind of special kind of considerations. And then on my Instagram and TikTok, I talk about life abroad. And we are having our next veterans event in the Dominican Republic April 9th, and we're going to be having them monthly as well as excursions and cool events for veterans. So check it out.
Hell yeah, dude. I do have one final question for you, actually, before we conclude here. Let's say time and money are not an obstacle, and you could accomplish any goal for what you have created. If you just had no time and money constraints, would you have like a community center? Would you like what would that look like? Like you times 10 where you're at now and what you're providing now.
I think something like that would be cool for veterans. What eventually I'd like to do is like have like a retreat type center where you can come and stay for a month, and it's just like a mental health retreat, which I've thought about doing some retreats and things like that because I can just rent like a 10-bedroom villa and then have 10 veterans come in and we just go like scuba diving to the beach, do yoga, decompress, no cell phones, that type of stuff. So that's the kind of thing that I'm looking at transitioning into. It's just doing it the right way and kind of figuring out a good way to do that. Plus, veterans can be super difficult to deal with. I mean, you know that. Like sometimes you're like, oh man, I don't even want to mess with it. Like, but I'm working through it.
Dude, I think a retreat would be amazing. Like if you custom built the day by day retreat, like a 10-day retreat,
Yeah,
that would
something like that'd
be
be pretty easy. It'd be
run by
fun.
you with everything you know and all the places you know. That would be amazing, dude. You and like you could even have another retreat where you just show how to live abroad. Like, hey,
Yeah,
you want to find out what it's like? Come visit me, spend your vacation with me, and I'm going to run you through exactly how I do it.
yeah.
Dude, that would be next
No, I
level.
think that's a winner. I think that's a winner. It's just, you know, is it going to be worth it? Because it's kind of what we do now. It's kind of what I do now. Like veterans come in, go
Yeah.
out, do stuff. You know, like I help veterans get scuba dive certified, and all those types of things. Like it's fun.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I got you. I see you smiling. You're like, bro, I'm not only doing that
I'm
now, but
chilling.
I'm happy I'm happy chilling where I'm at. I'm not sure I want to
Yeah,
do
but
all
hey,
that.
if you come down, you can sleep on my couch. We can do the podcast by the pool. Like,
Oh,
it'll be fun.
bro. We're gonna meet one day overseas because now I'm retired. My income is way better from my retirement. And so one day, John, we will have an in-person talk. We will be on the beach chilling, just loving life. And I can't wait to
That sounds great.
personally meet you one day. So thank you so much for spending time with me. Thank you so much for what you do to the veteran community. Uh, and for anyone still listening, thank you for listening to the very end. But this was the hero's journey of John Davis, and we're out.